Hey friends, it's Melvin. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Here's just a few quick things I wanted to notify you guys about before we get started. First up, very soon, new episodes will be releasing Wednesday mornings rather than Tuesday. So don't panic if you don't see a new episode on Tuesday. Just wait a little longer and you'll see it in your feed. Second, we've introduced a mailbag. Check those show notes and toward the bottom you'll see a mailbag link. You'll then be able to text us any questions you might have about movies, the movie industry, or any movie/Christian related questions you might have. Then we'll respond in a future episode, so send us your questions now. Up next, Patreon polls, which are available to Patreon supporters at the $3 tier or higher, have been updated. Supporters can now suggest films or shows to be reviewed at the end of each month. The two most liked submissions will become the options for the Patreon poll, so if you want to hear us talk about your favorite movie or show, join our Patreon and start campaigning. And lastly, whether you're a new or longtime listener, please consider writing a review or rating the Cinematic Doctrine podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Apart from financially supporting on Patreon, these are the two most helpful ways to support the show. And that's it. Enjoy the episode.
You're listening to Cinematic Doctrine.
Hey, Melvin.
Hey, Dan, what's going on, man?
I got into a car accident.
What?
Yesterday.
What are you talking? You've been having car troubles for the last 4 months, dude.
Yeah.
What's going on?
So I was making a big purchase. I spent $1,000 but I have money budgeted to me, and so does my senior pastor, to buy books for professional development. And a friend of mine is leaving pastoring. He's leaving the ministry, and so he was just selling off his library. So I was like, sweet deal. Not that sweet that he was leaving pastoring, but sweet deal. I'm ready to get some cool books and stuff. So I was meeting his wife, who recently gave birth, at a mall in the parking lot. We were making a drug deal, but it's theology books and such. Many of which I will soon recommend on a show at some point, I'm sure. So I'm driving up, and I meet her, and we're just filling my car with boxes. And so I didn't ask him, so I asked him what happened, why is he getting rid of his library? She's like, oh man, I was hoping you wouldn't ask. And so it turns out he was going for his ordination. He was doing his ordination papers, and he encountered questions he didn't have answers to. And in the process of that, on top of an incident that's actually kind of my fault, where I talked him into going to the psych hospital because he was suicidal. So he gets out of the hospital, he gets medication, and the medication he gets takes away his fear of death. He is worried about what happens after he dies. And so out of the fear of death, and then he's encountering these questions he has answers to. The collection of that makes his faith kind of fall apart. So that's why he's getting rid of his library. And so I ended up talking to his wife for a while because she's still a believer. And, they're going through a rough patch. And throughout all this time, turns out she's pregnant. Mm-hmm. And so she gives birth to this child. And the birth of their child kind of brings them together a little bit. So we're talking about how this child's kind of this, almost like an anchor for them. It's a sign of God's faithfulness throughout all of this. And so, I'm praying for her now. I'm praying for him, obviously. And it was just this bittersweet thing where, obviously I like getting books and stuff, but, I let him know, listen, if you ever want these back, I'll just give them back to you. It's just it's been a running thing in my life. All of these people I went to Bible college with, because this is a guy I went to school with.
Yeah, that's right.
This was bi visibility week. Half the kids that bullied me in high school and college and called me gay and made fun of me all came as bi this week. And then half of them are people from I went to school with, and they're leaving the ministry, leaving the faith. Their lives are falling apart. It's just it's a reminder of we have feet of clay. You're human, and it is only by the grace of God that people survive. Most people don't last a year or 2 years in ministry, and they're just dropping like flies. And so I was thinking about that, and as I'm driving home. I drove to another state. It's a lot
to be thinking about when driving.
And I'm pondering this, I'm praying. I'm like, God, why are these faithful people leaving the ministry? Why do some make it and others don't? It's a question I've obsessed with for a long time. And I'm driving home, and I pass this guy. He has long hair, he's unkempt face, and his car looks like, a junker. And for some reason, he stuck out to me. I'm like, I don't know about this guy. And so I pass him, and then there's the stop and start flow of traffic. I stop because there's traffic in front of me. I look in my mirror, and I just watch him. And he's behind me now. And he looks down, I think he might be looking at his phone. he looks up and there's just terror in his face, and he slams the brakes.
Oh no!
And I'm just like, this guy's gonna hit me, isn't he?
Yeah.
Hits me in the back of the car, and I just was like, oh my gosh! But we're in the far left lane, so we can't pull over.
Right.
So I just keep driving, and I'm just driving, and he's driving, and he pulls up next to me. We roll down our windows. We're still driving, and we're just talking to each other. And there's just terror on his face, and he's like,
dude, I'm so sorry.
Okay?
Oh my gosh.
Are you okay? I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
fine. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to.
Poor guy.
Which is good. They didn't mean to hit me.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like I could tell this guy Bob books. I could tell he's Christian. I hate Christians. He's just, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, dude, it's okay, man. It's okay. He's like, oh, are you okay? I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, oh,
yeah.
He's like, I'm like, is the damage bad? Is it bad? He's like, no, it looks fine. Which I don't know if I trust him. And I was like, it's all right. We're cool. It's fine, man. It's okay. And in my head, when I say it's okay, I mean, I'm not mad at you.
Right.
God's mercies are new every morning. There's grace for us. And I have this thing where I assume we're all on the same page about stuff. And he's just like, oh, good. And then he just like gets off on the next exit and leaves. Like he doesn't pull over.
So you guys didn't even pull over?
I think when I said it's okay, I think he heard, we're cool, man. Don't worry about it. Wink, wink. And in my head, I meant, I did not get a neck injury. I'm not going to sue you. We're fine. So we just leaves.
Let's pull over to like at least assess the situation. Yeah.
So I drive home another hour. Pull into the parking lot of my church. I got the books for my pastor. I got books for me, and it's just like we look at my car, and there's just like an outline. There's like you can see where he hit me in the back of the car because he had like a snub nose car. So there's just a dent in the back of my trunk where just an outline of his car is there.
That's kind of cute.
I was like, well, it doesn't look bad, and my car runs fine. So,
wow, I'm glad you're safe, and I'm glad I guess he was safe. Maybe he could just be a little safer next time. But
the pastor in me came out in that moment. It was like, dude, it's all right, man. It's all good, man. in light of eternity, what is this moment?
Yeah.
So I'm getting AAA soon, in case anything happens to me.
Hey there, it's your friendly neighborhood call to action. Just checking in on you. Hope you're doing all right. I'm just stopping by to say, if you enjoy the show, you can always subscribe and write a review for Cinematic Doctrine. There's iTunes, Podchaser, basically anywhere you listen. You can give us a shout out with a thumbs up, 5 stars, gripping positivity. Or if you hate the show, you can say that too.
Wait, what? What are you saying? Why are you saying
Well, I'm not going to tell them what to do, Ted. They're free to do what they want. Our analytics say we got a lot of listeners in the US, and they love their freedoms. And you're also free to check out our Twitter. Very active there. We host polls, memes. There's also the Cinematic Doctrine Facebook group called Cinematic Doctrine Facebook Group. If you want to join, just answer the questions, read the rules, and tell them the podcast sent you. Also, you should check out our website. Some really cool stuff there. Editorials, written reviews for movies we haven't had time to cover. Always check out cinematicdoctrine.com when you get the chance. Oh, Ted also told me I shouldn't forget to mention the Patreon. Something about you can support us or something? Wait, Ted, I thought this was like a hobby thing. You want me to
expand Cinematic Doctrine? You know this already.
Right. Yeah, I forgot. I'm the one who put all this together. Yeah, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as low as $3 a month, you can gain access to exclusive content like The Pre-Show, which features free-form and Christian-friendly discussions on all kinds of topics, as well as influence the podcast. That's right, each month you get to vote on a movie we discuss on the show. Previous movies our lovely Patreon supporters have chosen are To All the Boys I've Loved Before, Hamilton, Onward, and American Gospel Christ Alone. Huh, you guys have good taste. Anyways, I gotta run, so I'll see you guys later. Yeah, what's ParaNorman about, Dan?
ParaNorman is a great movie. ParaNorman is I believe it's the second. Well, it's kind of the third big output from Studia, and I always pronounce their name incorrectly. Laika?
That's what I say.
Laika? I was going to say Laika, but famously they were the primary creative force behind Nightmare on Elm Street, Nightmare on Elm Street.
I do the exact same
keep
thing
that
every
in.
time. Nightmare Before Christmas.
Primary career versus Nightmare Before
and
Christmas.
Coraline, even. Same director as Nightmare.
So Tim Burton has made quite a bit of money off slapping his name all over Nightmare Before Christmas, despite having very little to do with the film.
He just wrote it, didn't he?
So it's based on a poem he wrote. He commissioned a film based on a poem he wrote, and that was all the creative input he put into the film.
So he didn't do the songs, he didn't do the characters.
Nope, he didn't direct, write, or any of that stuff. So he did visit set 3 or 4 times, according to the director.
Like a typical executive producers.
Yes.
They get their free lunch because they show up on set and eat the donuts and then they leave.
So weirdly specific beef you seem to have.
With executive producers in particular.
That's what our producer does. He just shows up and eats a sandwich. So far we've established the studio that made the movie. So Coraline,
right.
Coraline was their first big breakout, like striking out on their own type of movie, which I don't know if we'll do that anytime soon or anything.
It'd be cool. It's still huge. We sell a lot of Coraline stuff.
I love Coraline. Coraline's movie also made my dad cry. Like, he got so uncomfortable watching it, he'd get up and leave the room, which is weird for a kids film. So following the success of Coraline, they decided to make a second film, which is ParaNorman, which is directed by Sam Feld and Chris Butler and written by Chris Butler, who don't have a lot of credits to their names outside of these films. I know Chris Butler directed the recent Bigfoot movie that came out from them. And so ParaNorman is one of those charming, great films that I think can only exist with an animation, which I think is in this case strengthened by the unique stop motion animation the studio is famous for. Mm-hmm. It tells a story of a young outcast who totally, really, man oh man, does he feel like someone involved in the movie really wanted to make a movie about themselves as a kid. Because he loves old horror movies, he loves zombie movies, and he also can talk to ghosts and sees ghosts, despite the protests of his family, voiced by a very recognizable selection of famous comedic actors and actresses. And so Norman is just a weird outcast kid, and he can see ghosts and he talks to them. However, there's 2 interesting creative decisions they make. The first is that the ghosts are not malevolent, angry forces. They just sort of hover around just because that's what ghosts do. Some of them have unfinished business left, and that's why they're still on Earth. And so Norman, who is already awkward in the way that kids in 80s movies are awkward, has the extra layer of he talks to ghosts. McLovin bullies him at school because he's a freak. And so the thing that pushes it forward, however, is it just so happens that there is an ancient prophecy, MacGuffin, end of the world type event, which his crazy uncle is warning him about. And then his uncle very quickly in the movie dies, which is kind of interesting for a kid's film. And then his uncle's ghost says, you have to help the thing. There's a thing that's going on. You have to stop it. There's like an evil witch type character. And so Norman and his band of friends in a Stranger Things Super 8 kind of way have to go on an adventure to stop the forces of evil. And of course, this story about acceptance and not judging people who are different. And the end resolution really not only does it hammer home that theme, and hammers home the theme in an absolutely heartbreaking and sad way.
Yes.
It moves me in a way that not a lot of movies do.
Yeah.
It's a clever, creative, fun movie. Part of why we really want to do this for the season is it's a perfect Halloween film in that it is scary, but it's scary in a fun, cover your eyes, but look through your fingers kind of way, as opposed to scary in a bad way. It's also a good children's film in that it teaches good, wholesome lessons, but it's also engaging in a way that adults will surely appreciate.
Yeah, it's very funny.
It's very funny. It's cleverly written. It's creative and fun. I wish it was a little more popular than it is. It unjustly lost to Brave at the Academy Awards for Best Animated Feature, which is just nonsense.
Wasn't that the classic thing that if
Pixar
it's a Disney Pixar thing, it's going to win?
Disney just win every year. But so I quite liked ParaNorman. I try and watch it every year around Halloween. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's one of the best versions of this type of movie. I think there's a special type of like Halloween time movie which rides that line of being something that is kind of scary, but also really just captures the feeling of being a kid around the time, where you can just feel the leaves falling to the ground and people putting up Halloween decorations and going trick-or-treating and your school being decorated, which I think is more what Halloween is about than, you know, Michael Myers coming to stab you to death or whatever. But it also still has the underlying sinister this is going to be something that you probably don't hear on a lot of Christian podcasts. Sinister in kind of that fun danger kind of way, where there is sort of still a dark Salem witch trials kind of underlying history behind it, which the film acknowledges, but also acknowledges the sad reality of the situation, which is that witch trials weren't exactly what some people maybe think they are. So I really enjoyed the film. What did you think, Melvin?
Yeah, ParaNorman's really good. It's just like, I remember the first time I watched it years ago, and I kind of stepped away from ParaNorman the exact same way I did then, which was I liked how it really started and I liked how it ended, but I found some of the middle stuff kind of a little just like long-winded, and but I really like it because it has that comfy fall vibe of like, you can make some popcorn, have some apple cider, and watch the movie with the windows open and hear cars driving by, and listening to the leaves rustle. It's just cozy. Yeah, it's good though. I really enjoy it. The animation definitely draws out a lot of it, but that's clear with Laika. I mean, they're really, really, really good at what they do. And I think what's nice is that things felt tangible in comparison to a lot of modern animation now. In fact, I'll even talk about this. I started watching Ed Nettie again. And something I really like about Ed Nettie is that it takes advantage of the fact that since it's animation, we can just do bizarre, weird things with animation, as opposed to modern animation, which is so much of like constant, like cut and pasting figures and putting them together, like kind of sprite animation style stuff. So like an example, like Ed Nettie, to hide, they all hide behind a really thin flagpole, and like, obviously it's not possible to do that, and that's kind of goofy and fun, whereas in a lot of modern animation nowadays it's sort of just like, it's more just like real life but animated. I don't know how else to describe kind of what I'm getting at, but it's just not taking advantage of the format that it's in to do otherworldly bizarre things that my brain will never question because it's a cartoon. And Laika has fun with that, I think, by just giving bizarre proportions to everybody. There, certain characters don't even look, I would even say, like pleasing to the eye, because like Neil kind of just looks almost like wrong as like the buddy friend character, but then it still works. I don't know. It's kind of fun to me that it just sort of just says like, it's a cartoon. Let's just have fun with the proportions and the character designs and everything, and runs with that. So
yeah, everyone's stylized.
Yeah, and I just want more of that anyway, but you don't get a lot of that nowadays, or you get it way beyond what's normal. I'm thinking of Centaur World, which I haven't checked out, but just by how stylized it looks, I kind of want to check it out anyway.
I heard it's good.
ParaNorman's good. I like it. I think it's pretty nice. ParaNorman. Well, you started talking about it in your introduction that ParaNorman is like, kind of like surprisingly really emotional, and you're right, because whenever I keep thinking of even the last shot of the movie, it just like my heart just starts to like tighten up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna start crying.
Why is that, Melvin? What is it about the movie that connects with you so well?
When we were watching this movie, I said to Kat, hey, I remember a time when I felt so lonely I tried talking to ghosts.
Okay. Is that a true story?
That is a true story. I went to a beach trip with my parents that I did not want to go to. My sister had already been in college, so I had no one to spend time with. I had just moved into a new house, and I had just left my school to do senior year at home. None of my friends ever texted me back whenever I wanted to get together, and I was very sad and alone. And so then I started to get into ghost adventures like every cool kid does. And Zach Baggins was my best friend. And so then I got a bunch of cool ghost stories from the library, because I didn't really want to go to the beach by myself with my parents because that's boring. And so I just stayed in the beach house, and I read some ghost story books, and then I put them down, and I just said, hey, if there's a ghost here, I'm not that scared. I just want to have a friend to talk to because I feel alone right now. And that's what I did for 4 days. And I know what it's like to feel alone and to feel different. And ParaNorman's best parts are when it really kind of, at least for me, that it most connects with, is when it's kind of going with that. Norman is so, like, nothing's actually wrong with Norman. In fact, what's kind of great is the introduction of him just saying hey to like nobody. He's walking down the street saying hi to, obviously they're ghosts, but like nobody's there. So it's just him alone.
Sequence. Yeah.
And then at some point it shows you what he's seeing. And it's like, oh, ghosts are everywhere. Like a pilot who fell into a tree, or a bird who has a soda can plastic wrapped around his neck, which is all pretty clever. And all of it's really wonderful. You're seeing like, oh, Norman's like totally normal. And he's just a sweet kid who just is finding who he connects with and is connecting with them. And then the next sequence that it shows on his walk to school is going through the seedy, just the town square. And it's disgusting and gross. And it looks like there's oil stains everywhere. You can practically smell it. It's just gross. There's like old men hitting on young women. And it's just the worst. And it's like this kind of amazing juxtaposition of like, why is everyone telling Norman to be normal when this is what they're offering him? I love how, what is it? There's a line when it's the play, and the woman saying the Puritans were people who basically just wanted to make it so sin never existed. And then like the Puritan zombies show up at the town square and it's just a denizen of sin. It's just awesome. It's like such a great scene. And so it's like, I know what it's like to feel alone. And then people are like trying to get you to like be a part of something. And then you're just observing it and you're like, nothing about this is appealing or interesting or fun. So I'll just take my weird stuff over here and spend time there, because that's the only thing that makes me feel like I'm alive. This is the only stuff that makes me feel important. I mean, isn't it so sweet that his grandmother literally will not die because she's like, well, I have unfinished business. I told your dad I would take care of you. That is so sweet.
Yeah.
and then even the fact that the introduction to Norman is he's watching a zombie movie, and it's like, it's so funny because the zombie movie is so bad.
It's very bad. It's the brain just has a giant like human bite mark on it.
Yeah, it's so cool. Which I wish this movie had more of that, since you're already playing with claymation, to just have more like claymation violence could be cool. But she doesn't even know what's going on in the movie, but Norman likes that she's there.
Why don't they just talk to each other?
Yeah, why don't they? It's so cute. And like when you're just feeling distant and weird, all you want is someone to just kind of step into your world and spend time with you. And I don't know, that's really sweet. So when the final scene of the movie is everyone just doing that, which is not spoilers for a movie that's 10 years old and isn't even talking about the actual plot of like the witch's curse and the Puritan zombies. When the final shot of the movie is the entire family steps into the room to watch his zombie movie, which they all know is going to be bad. And I'm sure Norman even knows is a bad movie. It's just really like, I can't talk because if I open my mouth, I'll start crying as the end credits roll. So yeah, I really, really, really like this movie. And then I also just like that it's sort of just a fun, innocent, spooky romp where like it turns out the zombies are actually just normal people that are just scared of the world. And so I love it. And then I also, I connect with its themes of like people do bad things because they're afraid. And I think that's not actually... People do bad things because, our hearts are full of sin and we want to do what we want. But it's not irrational to also say, like, now that we're separated from God, thanks to the fall, that, like, we're afraid. We don't have security anymore. So you just start doing anything that'll make you feel safe. And sometimes that means putting other people at expense, which is very sad because that's sin. And so it's themes about, like, people doing terrible things because they're afraid. It's like, well, yeah, that connects with me because I've done terrible things because I was scared. And I know plenty of people who are very repentant. And oftentimes it's like, well, I did this because of XYZ. And it turns out their reasons, although it's still sin, are rational and typically based on fear and lack of security. And not just security, but ultimately love. Because if God is love and we're separated from God, then all you want is that. Like, we need that. And so ParaNorman's a very sweet and fun movie. It's so innocent. It's so cute. I too wish it was bigger. I guess Coraline is a little scarier. And so I think that might be why it's connected with more people. Because scary stuff is cool. And ParaNorman, the middle, you're kind of like in the middle of the movie, the second act, and you're kind of always waiting. Like Kat observed, like once it starts, the movie keeps going at a breakneck pace. But what's funny is it's like it's constantly moving, but then there's never any threat. And so like it's not...
the threat is the idea of the curse will take
right,
effect.
but like nothing. There's but like that's like the threat is Michael Myers will kill Laurie Strode, but Michael Myers kills other people on his way to killing Laurie Strode, and so like there's not a lot of threat in this movie where it's like, yeah, the witch's curse is a threat, but like nothing else really happens. And it's mostly jokes and hijinks. It's like a slapstick movie in claymation. It's more funny than it is scary, and I wish it was more scary. But I know that that's a really, really hard line to balance, because like you go too scary and you're like, what is it? A couple years ago, Overdell's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which I think was probably a little too scary for a preteen audience, even though I think it was pretty decent. Or you go not scary enough and you just get ParaNorman, where it's mostly like, I feel like if I was a lot younger and I was like, finally a horror movie that I can watch because it's rated PG or PG, I think it's PG, right?
Yeah, PG, yeah.
And then I go there and it's not scary. Like I would be pretty disappointed. So,
well, it's like Neil Gaiman wrote Coraline, like the book. He expressly wrote it because he was his story he tells is he went to a bookstore and asked, what do you have for horror for children? And they were like, nothing. And so he decided to write his own version of what a horror story for a child would be. And I think that like in translation of adapting to a film, it is a horror film that is actually specifically scary to children, which I think is part of what the magic of that movie is. ParaNorman, like you get the impression that this is less an attempt to make a scary film for children and more a film that would speak to, the kids that shared similar experiences to you, where they don't feel like they fit in, or they feel like kind of like an outcast, or they feel like they're made to feel lesser because they're different. And what the magic of this film is that the end moral is to, I mean, it's a typical sort of acceptance of people who are different, but specifically more, it's the story of reaching out to those who are different. Because I'm a sucker for any movie where the resolution is something a little more clever than just punching, as much as I like punching. And the big reveal in the movie is a big scary ghost that everyone's afraid of. The witch character the witch who was killed in the Salem witch trials was not a older spooky witch who lives in the woods and eats children. It is a young, like 11-year-old girl who was executed. And the reason that she was seen to be a witch is she has the exact same abilities as Norman. She can also talk to ghosts, and that was seen as, witchcraft. And there's this great, and part of it's great for a child to see something like this is it immediately hits home the idea that like the people that you may be ostracizing or seeing as different may actually be the same as you. Right. Not only is she not scary or a horrible monster, she is like basically just Norman, but in a different time period. Mm-hmm. And that in and of itself is kind of beautiful. But like the beautiful resolution of a scene where he just sits with her as she essentially passes on, and it's like the first person she's ever talked to.
It's so sad. Yeah.
It's incredibly sad.
Oh my god,
shockingly sad. Not just because like the whole movie is pretty lighthearted. It's lighthearted, and then there'll be a scene where like his uncle just dies.
yeah, it just happens. They fake die, and then he really dies. Yeah. And then there's hijinks where Norman is having to like play with a dead body for a bit. It's bizarre. And not only that, but like even learning about the witch trials hijinks. I mean, literally one of the costumes in the play is Neil dressed as the hanging tree. Like that's so stupid. Like, so everything you've been taught about this movie is like, don't take it too seriously. And then you get to the third act and it's like, oh man, like this is really just rough stuff. It's wild. And the third act's fun too, because it kind of feels pre-Spider-Verse. They have almost the same aesthetic of just like ignore rules and physics, just do something that looks really cool. Because a lot of the visuals in that third act when Norman's talking with Agatha is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's when I say the word inventive, I don't just mean like, oh, they come up with inventive things to do the plot, but like when they're illustrating the story via animation, in a way that you couldn't get in live action, which I think a lot of great animation is ones that remind you of like why the medium is so powerful and important in the first place. Where it's not only just because it matches kind of the storybook aesthetics that they're going for here and there, not just because they're telling old fairy tales and they're going into the town's history and that sort of thing, but because it's a story that I think because imagine this as like a big studio film, for example, I could see it just becoming like CGI sludge where like there's big portals open up in the sky and lights come out and the zombies are just CGI, which I think would either make the movie unintentionally more creepy for children or make it so fake looking that it doesn't have any effect, where while the stop motion zombies match the tone they're going for. And again, they have this thing where like the zombies are kind of goofy. They're very Three Stooges-esque in the way they interact with one another and kind of shuffle around. So like, yeah, the animation isn't just like beautiful to look at, but I think it helps tell the story they're trying to in a way that's very effective. And like it weirdly makes things sadder because the story feels more childlike, like a scene where like a young girl like who is alone and afraid and no one's ever understood her like dies and presumably goes to heaven or hell. Like it's sadder because it's in this childlike story, but it also is more palatable to its audience because you aren't seeing like a human girl who's an actress like dying, for example.
Right.
So it is a perfect like middle ground for the content they're putting forth. The story they're putting forth, content. Jeez.
Content.
So, forgive me for using such a horrible word.
Daddy's made you your favorite open wide. Here comes some content.
ParaNorman is a movie that has so few flaws. Like, there's nothing about the movie I don't like. I think it's great at what it is. I highly recommend it. There's something about it, and I think part of what's makes the movie so popular among nerds is they too remember being a kid who liked weird things, and maybe older adults or the kids ostracize them for being weird. Especially,
I think even just us being Christians who like horror movies puts us in the camp of like
True.
Norman, where it's like,
I just like zombies. What's the big deal? You know?
Yeah, I kind of like a good kill. I like Malignant. Whoa, what a surprise. I like when a lot of people who probably shouldn't die that moment end up getting killed. It's kind of fun to watch. So I don't know, but like, cause we had a section in was it Candyman or Malignant? I can't remember which episode. I think it was Candyman.
It was Candyman.
And the section, I do intend to put it up on Patreon at some point this month in October. Editing is a lot of time, and I just got a promotion at work. So y'all can just be patient before I introduce these new Patreon things. But in the discussion, you start talking about how, like, yeah, a friend of yours was listening to you talk about horror movies, and they were just totally thrown back, like, you watch stuff like that? And you're like, yeah, it's fun. like this is just something I enjoy doing. And like, we have a really good discussion again on like content and where to go and stuff like that. And I think like what would be nice is more of a patient moving into like asking the question, well, what is it that draws you to things like this? What is it that draws you to enjoy or to connect with movies that are scary or violent or whatever? And I think most of the time when I talk to people who are interested in horror movies have more of a reason for why they enjoy the movies that they do than people who just watch Marvel or, I don't know, quote unquote, acceptable Christian movies. Because like in action thrillers, most people don't seem to mind, even though in most of those movies, it's like hardcore vigilante justice, which is way more problematic than trying to watch someone survive a killer. If you really want to get down to content and what you consume.
I mean, two things. Like first, like just a thought experiment as I would throw this out to people. Because I went to a Pentecostal Bible college who are very... Pentecostals traditionally are very...
Can't have fun. Just kidding. I don't know. I don't know anything.
Kind of. Like they're very your own fun. They're very cautious when it comes to entertainment. Mm-hmm. But what I would throw out to people is like, what is objectively more evil? Like a ghoul that literally doesn't exist or the mob? But like you're way more likely to watch something involving the mob or organized crime for entertainment, but people get like weird when you introduce ghosts and goblins
or watch The Descent.
Yeah, it's
like, I'm sorry, but like The Descent's not real. It's not real at all.
This is not a real thing. And so like my friend was put forth, like, it's weird that like Pentecostals are so worried about like magic being a threat. It's just like, unless our school gets attacked by wizards, that's not a thing that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
It's like, what is happening? Like, did I miss that? Like,
they're having a Magic the Gathering tournament right down the road. Oh, we got to shut the school down.
Meanwhile, as I've established at the top of our episode, the real problem that my school faces people struggling with their faith or moral failings.
Exactly.
Or, struggles with sin. That was probably way more worse.
Well, isn't that the thing? When you start focusing so much on the law, it starts to suffocate and kill you, and you have to go, I need to take a break. And then, unfortunately,
that to me is more of an understandable struggle. Like if someone was struggling with legalism, but like this is literally just like 80s satanic panic level, like they didn't think about it.
But isn't that just legalism? That is legal. It's
like an offshoot of legalism, but like I don't even like, to me, like there's a more thought put into legalism versus like that looks spooky, that must be bad. End of it. There's no thought about the moral implications. There's no thought about legalism or anything. There's people who definitely struggle with legalism in my school, but like I feel like that's giving it more of like intellectual like weight than it even probably like deserves.
I get that. Yeah.
But like my other thought is like I feel like Christians who consume like horror films tend to like have put more thought into it. Like because we've all had that moment where someone was like, "Why are you watching that? Like, are you okay with that?" And you're just like, "Huh, maybe." And so you've thought about it. You've thought about the implications of it. You think about. You've engaged with what is it you like about these things. You've engaged with what things you should cut out of your life. You've like there's so much more engagement that comes with just taking a second and thinking about why you watch what you watch or play what you play or listen to what you listen to. And so that's like a level of engagement that maybe people who just like, oh yeah, I like that Arnold Schwarzenegger and I like when he shoots people, maybe like those people haven't thought about it. Like there are people I know who's like, oh yeah, I watch war movies. And that's as far as they've gotten with it. They're just like, well, that's a real thing that happened. So that's historically accurate. And she's like, I don't know if you've watched like actual war footage, but most war films are not accurate to what happens in warfare. Warfare is very boring, and then it gets very sad. Like it's not, there's not, that war doesn't have very good choreography or good, cool looking explosions, Yeah, I think like for Christians who grew up in like strict households or went to strict places, like because they had to actually like defend their hobbies and like wrestle with God on these things, they've come out the other side more introspective about these things versus people who never think about their entertainment at all,
Right. And you want to be careful not to push people away, because that's sort of what the sadness and then the catharsis of ParaNorman is if you're constantly pushing somebody away, it's like dangerous. Like, isn't it like one of the most heart-wrenching things in the beginning of the movie when like Norman's like, look, I didn't ask to be born this way. And then his dad gets out the car and is like, yeah, we didn't ask for that either. You're like, oh my gosh, like that is so horrible.
My wife gasped at that part when we watched it together.
I was not remembering it and it totally hit me in the chest. I was like, oof, like that's rough.
Yeah.
And like, isn't that sort of the frustrating thing that most people would rather do as opposed to getting to know somebody, especially when it comes to kids? At work, we joke about how it's not really a joke. It's more of us just ventilating, which I guess people listening can start to figure out where I work by how I describe it, but I'm not going to say it. But like, we'll joke about how a family comes in, the kids are a little nervous because it's what they like, but they know that it's weird, or at least they think it's weird because people tell them it's weird. And then the parents are reluctant and impatient. And whenever we ask them, hey, you guys looking for anything? The parents always like, they're looking for something. I don't know. I don't get it. Then they leave. And all of my coworkers and I are frustrated, and we'll just go, wouldn't it be great if parents like the kids that they made? Wouldn't it be cool if they actually just enjoyed exploring them as people? Like, but sometimes parents just decide they don't want to do that. And like, that's kind of the drama of the beginning of the movie, is that no one wants to get to know Norman, take him seriously. Look, Norman knows that it's weird that he sees ghosts. So like, just talk, like all you had to be is like, yeah, that is kind of weird. What's your grandma saying? Like, that's it. That's all you got to do. And like, because all people know that they're into things that are considered quote unquote abnormal because they're watching the same shows you are, where the same characters make fun of the other characters for being strange and weird. And you're laughing at the joke and they're seeing you laugh at that joke. And so they're seeing, hey, another deep cut of Cinematic Doctrine where I talked about a hidden life. And I said, what was it? There was a New Year's Eve party where someone was joking about Post Malone looking like a weirdo. And like, I took it wasn't even targeted to me, but I know that I dress eccentrically sometimes, or I painted my nails before, or I even put it on eyeliner, and I've done stuff like that because I find all that stuff fun to explore. And I was like, well, how far do I have to go before this person ostracizes me and calls me a freak or something like that? And like, because people are always observing and always listening and it's, you can't turn it off. You just can't. And so when you're feeling weird and ostracized and pushed away, it's isolating and alienating to the point that when Norman is approached by Neil, he's like, nah, I don't think you should be my friend. I'm too weird. I mean, that's such a sad thought to just decide you can't have friends because you're so strange and weird. And unfortunately, at least I know my experience, not just in Christianity, but growing up. But although, I mean, I guess my experience was Christianity because that's how I grew up. That was a lot of it. And it doesn't make it really all that attractive to think that, well, if the Lord thinks I'm weird or the things that, or even like the things that he's made me like, which I know I'm navigating a mixture of what he's made imbued within me that's good, and then also my sinful nature. But like when all of that is wrapped together is just considered weird, ostracized, or different, that's going to start making it really hard in your walk with the Lord. And so I don't know. This movie's good. It makes me feel a lot of things, Daniel. I finished it and I was like, I think I need to take some notes. But like, I don't think I can handle it. I don't think I can handle these notes because it's going to be like a journal entry in one of my like devotions where I'm getting too real and I'm like, I'm exhausted. So, oh man,
I'm going to start a rumor that you work at like a fursuit like store.
That's right. That'd be great. Yeah, why not?
I don't understand why my kid likes this.
That's so weird. Wish my kid just
accept your kid.
Yeah, just accept your kid for the persona that they are. Yeah.
Not to follow up your like very like
honest
like,
sharing
thing, and you're very vulnerable there. And I'm just like, what about furries?
Yeah. This whole episode's been vulnerable. You ever hear about that Christian host? He said he talked to ghosts.
What a freak!
Take a sound.
That'd be great if that was our takeaway from this episode.
1 star on iTunes. That host is weird. What a freak.
Well, I've never talked to ghosts, or tried.
Have you ever felt so lonely that you tried to talk to somebody, some stranger on the internet?
No, believe it or not. I did feel ostracized a lot as a kid for various reasons, mostly because like we moved around a lot and I was very awkward. Like my brother and I were like the only friends each other had for a lot of our childhood. And I was just like an awkward, annoying kid, you know.
You were the weird kid who loved the WWE, and you would stomp your foot and clench your fist. The WWE is real. I swear, it's real.
I wish.
It was a real turning point when you learned it was fake.
I came into wrestling knowing it was scripted, predetermined. I just tried to explain wrestling to my friend Rachel yesterday. And it did not go well. Just like what are you talking about? And my wife was egging me on because she likes other people to make fun of me for watching wrestling because she doesn't like wrestling. I was like, well, okay, listen, like it just did not go well. But yeah, I also was like a weird outcasty kid for a good portion of my childhood. Not for like, and again, not for any interesting reasons. I was just like a weird kid. So, like, I wish I could just point like they didn't like me because I was a nerd.
Isn't that the thing though? It's like it's not even like I had some sort of birth defect, so physically I could have like a reason for why I was bullied. Sometimes it's just like you were just decided to be the weird guy.
I went to Christian schools. It wasn't because I was Christian. Yeah.
It's just, kids are monsters, man. The more you talk about like your history and like unearth your past, you're like, I get why Elisha was like, Lord, bring a bear to kill these children that are mocking me. It's just like, I dig it. I get that passage now. Some people lose their faith at that passage. Me, I understand.
You sometimes talk about like putting like hard time limits on our episodes, and I feel like the main benefit would be like it would cut you off before you start saying things like, I think he was not wrong to want to kill those children. It's just like, oh, like Melvin, maybe we should cut it.
Well, the Lord does it though, so like, what are we supposed to think? Maybe it's that sometimes the Lord permits your prayers that are wrong to happen, and then you have to live with it, which could be a very interesting study. Who knows? That's a thread that you're just going to have to sit with, listener, as we get back to whatever Daniel was saying.
Yeah, like for me, the isolation was like I would spend instead of spending time with other children, I spent a lot of time playing video games and going into fantasy worlds via entertainment and stuff. So like I definitely saw that in Norman, and I understand like why he would choose, like, because movies and television shows and comic books, they don't talk back to you, they don't criticize you, you don't have to worry about being weird or doing something awkward around imaginary friends. So like I can see why he would then choose that, and then see himself as like a liability as a person, like telling other kids not to talk to him because he's weird. And so like I think like they've created a very realized character here that is very easy for children to identify with, because even popular kids deep down probably feel awkward and weird and at points. So like Norman is very great everyman hero, and the difference is like it's always useful and great when something that people feel internally is externalized by something a little more dramatic, in this case talking to ghosts. But I'm sure for other children it's something else. There's something about them that they think, if maybe you're a kid who has a funny accent, or you're like me, you're just a new kid at school all the time, and so like you feel like a kid who is some freak who talks to ghosts, that like maybe you don't talk to ghosts, but you certainly have done something weird in public that other people stared at you for, or you've done something that makes other kids be like, I don't want to be around that guy. And so like that is, I think, part of the power of Norman as a protagonist. And I think that's what's so powerful in the end about him, not just like finding somebody who is like him, but like the fact that just talking to the person and having a moment of where they connect and they understand each other, that is all it takes to save the day. And I think that's like a beautiful note for the film to more or less kind of end on, is that like that is a wonderful lesson for children to learn, and that is a good reminder for adults, where like sometimes people don't need to be fixed, sometimes they just need to be understood. And I think for Christians, like understanding someone is a great bridge to then share the gospel, where
absolutely
like, people don't want to feel like you're approaching the gospel because you think you want to change them necessarily. You want to share the gospel with them because it's super duper important, and because it's how you enter a relationship with Jesus Christ. It is how you enter into eternity in paradise. Like a relationship with Jesus Christ makes your life better in every conceivable way. It is the most important thing, etc., etc. But like, I think people think that the gospel is your attempt to walk up to them and make some changes and adjustments to your harder edges that they just don't like.
You'll just be like Norman's dad trying to fix him all the time.
And you just don't like the fact they're different, and you want to change that because you don't like different. This is a great story about building a bridge. And like, it is like when you connect and when you can like cross over and be like, listen, like I don't dislike you because you're different, and nor do I see the fact that you're different as something that's inherently bad. And like that is where I think gospel conversations can take place. Rosario Butterfield talks a lot about how like the part of the problem that Christians face when reaching different demographics is that they want to have difficult conversations without first building a strong foundation to have them on.
Yes.
And so like if you want to have a difficult conversation with somebody, like it's much easier to have a difficult conversation with a family member or a friend than a difficult conversation with someone who's a borderline stranger. And like what we see in something with like the way Norman treats others and then the way people treat Norman is we see the two different extremes, where Norman talks to ghosts. He's fine with them. Like they drift in and out of his life, and he's not scared by it. He's not spooked by it. He just sort of accepts that they are there, and there's nothing he can really do to change that. And we see that he has good people skills with the people that will listen to him.
He'll just say hi to all of them. He knows them well. He remembers things about them, stuff like that. Like that.
he
is the most normal person in the whole. Yeah, he's crazy.
The problem isn't Norman. The problem is how people perceive Norman, as you talked about earlier. And so, like, we see that he is very kind. He's compassionate, and it's just these are the people that accept that from him. And later in the movie, like people learn to accept Norman. That's what you want out of this sort of movie. But like, it's like lovely the way they do it, and I think it's very nice. So, that is my feelings on ParaNorman.
I can't believe we haven't even talked about the best joke, which is one of the greatest payoffs in a movie, and it's when Mitch unfortunately shoots down Anna Kendrick's character and crushes her dreams. Do you know what I'm talking about, Dan?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I was purposely avoiding talking about it
because it's so funny. Yeah, well, hey, if you haven't seen ParaNorman, just look forward to it. It's great. It's one of the best payoffs in a movie in the world, and you didn't know that it was going to pay, but it does. It's great. Oh man, I would hate to think that particular scene was why people didn't see this movie, and by people I mean general audiences. By general audiences, I mean like Christians. But it seems like something that they would have complained about in 2012? Is that when this came out?
This was the big talking point about the movie.
Was it really? What?
Yes. Yeah.
Wait, then how are we not is that a thing? Because I just watched it. I was like, that was really funny. And then I was done.
This was very controversial at the time.
What?
Yeah, I remember it. I remember
it's
it being
a
a
good
talking
joke.
thing. Yeah.
It's funny.
It's literally, it has its own section on the Wikipedia page for the movie.
Can we kind of talk? Can you tell me about this? Because I just think one of our best dynamics on the podcast is that I know nothing and you know a lot, and then you just explain it. And I am the straight man that people get to embody. So okay.
Yeah, I mean,
if you haven't seen ParaNorman, check it out. This is our spoiler
you've
section.
Seen
But the joke we're talking about.
You have seen this controversy before. That's what I'm going to say.
You've seen it with Onward. You've seen it with Loki. All right. It is basically Anna Kendrick's character is hitting on Mitch the whole time, and Mitch is
voiced by Casey Affleck.
Yeah, it's great.
Doing his voice.
Yeah,
but it weirdly works for dumb Jock.
It is so funny, and he's just like he's awesome. Mitch is a cool character.
So I will say that, first off, on viewing, I was a little shocked. I wouldn't say shocked. I was a little surprised that some of the more risque jokes in the movie, which center around this.
From the start. What are you watching? Sex and violence? Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Anna Kendrick hits on this character, Mitch, who's the big meathead character. And Anna Kendrick...
who skips leg day every week.
Yes. Anna Kendrick is very forward with Mitch. And the joke is that it's so obvious that she's hitting on him, but he is he just totally whiffs every time.
Get it, yeah.
He's not interested. And at first, the joke, and I will say this plays with audience expectations, which is that you just think he's stupid. But it turns out the whole movie, she's just oh, blah, blah, blah. And it's oh, yeah, which is my Casey Affleck impression.
Yes. That's just a ghost story. It's the exact same.
My kids died.
Yeah.
I'm so depressed.
Yeah.
That's what Manchester by the Sea is.
And so, yeah, that's right.
I'm so you can't just die. You can't just lay down and die. Maybe I can. Do you know the movie? You know the movie. You know the movie Serenity with Matthew McConaughey?
Yeah, it's amazing. You mean the one that's in a game?
Yeah, my impression of that movie is
I love that movie so much.
This is a video game.
Yeah, it's so funny.
He doesn't say that in the movie, but I was just driving around to work and be like, this is a video game.
The Mario Kart section is amazing. That movie, once you learn it's a video game, they go all out because they're like, hey, you know about video games, right? You're an old man who watches movies. You know games exist. And then it's just it's awesome. It's
we finally entered the stage of this podcast where people get to see that I'm actually an amazing impressionist. They're so
and that
spot on.
We know about movies that no one's seen, like Serenity, which nobody saw.
I saw it in theaters.
One of the best trailers. Yeah. I was hooked. I was like, I gotta see this movie. And I totally missed it. For a year, I never saw it. I watched a YouTube video talking about it because it was talking about bad spoilers and movies that don't pay off. And I was like, yeah, I guess I'll never see it because it's too late. And it starts talking about the spoiler in the movie. And I pause it and I grab Catherine's arm and I go, no, that's not what happens in the movie. There's no way. There is no way. And I keep watching it. I'm like, I don't believe this. I do not believe this. 3 days pass. It's the middle of the night. I wake Catherine up. She's been sleeping for 2 hours. And I go, there's no way Serenity happens. And she goes, just watch it already, Melvin. Just watch it. And I go, and the next day I watch it. First thing in the morning. I haven't even had breakfast yet. And it's exactly what happened. This is all a true story.
For those who do not know,
totally
Serenity has a standard drama trailer. It's just
and it's pretty good trailer.
Yeah,
it's really good.
It looks like a lurid, like 90s like adultery drama with Anne Hathaway, Matthew McConaughey, and all that stuff.
Oh man, and Jason Isaac, who I kind of like as a B grade, C grade actor. I really like him. I think I'm waiting for him to be in the movie that definitely takes off, but like he just hasn't been in it yet.
And and so it's like it looked like your standard drama, and I know that because when I saw it, went to the theater. Half the theater was there because of internet buzz about this movie that has the most stupid, ludicrous twist. And the other half was just like, oh, I like Matthew McConaughey. I like Anne Hathaway.
And probably a bunch of like older women who like reading lurid novels.
This looks like a sexy thriller, with twists and turns and backstabbing. And then halfway through the movie, it's a video game. They're inside of a video game.
Yeah, and an NPC's like, I'm not supposed to tell you.
Was just like,
what?
Cackling. The other half was like, what is happening?
I heard that it was supposed to be a great theater experience if you got a packed theater.
If you did not know it was coming, it's not even really like foreshadowed in a way that makes sense unless you're familiar with video games. But if you're also familiar with video games, you know that no video game would ever operate the way this video game does.
It's a video game made by a child, but it's about their dad sleeping with people.
Anne Hathaway. So this kid made a game where he role plays as his dad having sex with people, which is weird. But like, it's
weird.
Like the kid in the game is like experiencing an abusive relationship, like his dad's abusing him or something. So like the movie ends with him walking the video game as like news footage of like a kid who like shot his dad plays over the trailer. It's like another twist on top of like already like insanity.
What's the fish called? The fish is named something because there's another subplot of like the dad is a fisher and like
he's trying to catch the fish.
And like the fish's name is something really funny.
It's like Destiny or something like that.
Like
yeah.
So
which you think,
awesome.
That's a pretty dumb, that's a pretty like blunt metaphor, and then like actually it makes less sense in context of the movie. So yeah, it was something. My wife was like, that was great. I was like, it sure was.
It's Justice. The fish's name is Justice.
He's
trying to catch Justice. It's so, oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Yeah. So Mitch doesn't catch on to the fact that Anna Kendrick is trying to
but this
get with him.
ParaNorman has a more controversial twist apparently than Serenity.
Yes, because at the end of the movie, Anna Kendrick finally is getting through to Mitch, like, oh, we should watch like this, come watch this like rom-com. And he's like, oh yeah, that'd be great. My boyfriend loves rom-coms. Like, and so like, the joke is like, oh, the reason Mitch wasn't interested is because he's gay.
It's not because he's
Anna
stupid.
Kendrick,
although he is stupid.
Womp womp.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then and then the movie circles on him as it goes da 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 da.
And the camera turns to show the director, and he's giving a middle finger to Jesus on the cross. It's just like it's so.
Whoa.
It's like
ParaNorman gets spicy again. So yeah, so the controversy was a little more talked about because I guess this was a little more unexpected in 2012.
Yeah. Movies were very slow to being more accepting. TV was way
So the
ahead.
thing was like, animated kids film features gay character. And so like the controversy is always like the way it's presented to viewers. Like, you turn on and Tucker Carlson's like, oh, they're just having, like, I don't have a Tucker Carlson voice. I don't know why I did that. But like, it's like, they're putting gay stuff in the movies, but like, it's like it's a blink and you miss it. Like, it's very minor, but yeah, it was like really talked about at the time, which I do think kind of maybe hurt its spot because that does hurt it with family demographic, especially if you're playing the game of telephone where it's like a character in the movie is gay, gets turned into who knows what by the time your mom hears it from her friend on Facebook,
and it's already a horror movie, quote unquote. So yeah, it goes around.
Yeah, it was kind of a big deal. I remember people talking about it, and I remember not caring because I just like movies. So I think there is a conversation to be had about how representation affects children and so on and so forth. But this is already a movie where if you're watching, your kid should not watch movies like this unmonitored. So like, you should probably sit down and have a conversation with the kid, not just because of this. Like, there's a ton of stuff in this movie that, it'd be a good drive home from the movie theater conversation or sitting on the couch with the kid conversation. But it's such a throwaway moment, and it plays as a joke that it doesn't really go either way, to be an honesty.
No moms were calling other moms to say Anna Kendrick's character, who's
like 21 is trying to have extramarital sex with another guy. No one's going to call about that. But the second Casey Affleck makes a joke about being gay, man, can't see that movie. Can't do it.
Well, because it's like it's not presented as a good or bad thing in the context of the movie. It's a punchline, so there's plenty of other things we could talk about in terms of like representation in children's media and how Christians should feel about it. This is not the place for it because
it's not about
not only does it not play into the movie in any way, it is a punchline.
Yeah.
He is gay in the sense that like it's funny that Anna Kendrick was hitting on a gay guy for a whole movie. He's not gay in the sense that like you see him holding hands with somebody or it's commented on or it's presented as a good or bad thing. It's a punchline. But yeah, it was a big deal at the time. So
that's crazy. I had no idea.
Yeah. That's kind of why I didn't want to mention it, is because I was like, I don't know if I want to have that conversation in ParaNorman because it's so minor.
We'd have the same exact. The conversation is interesting because it's history at this point, and not because of the actual conversation itself. The actual conversation itself about like you just said, quoting off like representation in kids' movies, this, that, whatever. That's not interesting, but history is interesting.
So, Melvin, would you recommend Serenity?
Serenity has a strange, like every 30 minutes you're going to see Matthew McConaughey's butt. So I don't know. That's going to be questionable.
Right. The movie does have quite a bit of nudity and sexual content.
The funniest part of that scene, which I found out about online, was there's no nudity here. Anne Hathaway gets up from taking a hot shower, a steaming bath, no nudity. She's in a towel, but the mirror that spans the entire length of the wall, she has to like clear fog off of the mirror, but they only fogged the part where her face is. And it's so that as an actor, she can fulfill the script. That is, she clears it off. But it's like, but no, the rest of the mirror was clear the whole time. So she could have just stepped to the side. And so it's like the perfect idea of like a director who's just given up. Because like you would be in the set going, wait a minute, the whole thing should be foggy. Just it's not there. I don't know, man. All right. So I guess I would recommend Serenity if you want to skip past the nudity and stuff. I think it was on Prime when I watched it years ago. ParaNorman, though, definitely check that out. It's on Netflix right now, and it's a good Halloween movie. Wholesome Halloween. We were gonna try and do a wholesome Halloween thing. Kind of fell through now because
this might be the first and last edition of this month's Wholesome Halloween.
Hey, if we get more supporters in the future and we can afford to spend more time on this, maybe even have an editor, we could totally do mini sections like that. That'd be great.
Yeah,
and we didn't have to always follow what's releasing, like Venom 2.
Depending on how Venom goes, that could also be wholesome. You never know.
It's just if it's as tame as the first movie and just like nothing happens.
Well, he eats a guy's head in that movie.
Like off screen though. It's not real.
Venom was such a weird movie.
Venom is weird.
I also wholeheartedly recommend ParaNorman. It's great. I think Coraline is still my favorite film put out by the studio, but I think ParaNorman is a wonderful follow-up to Coraline. It's like we said, it's a great Halloween movie. It's a great kids movie, in the sense, also, like I know I just threw some qualifiers out there, but
preteen or young teen,
preteen, yeah. But like I remember as a kid specifically liking like Spielberg type movies because they're a little more intense than what my parents wanted me to watch, which was nothing. They didn't want to watch anything, but so it's like if you're a kid, you're gonna love this movie because there's a little bit of danger. It's a little more risque than what you want. But as a parent, I definitely would recommend watching it with your children if you choose to show them this film. I like it as an adult. And I think I can't really say anything else about it.
So apart from the movie, what else would you recommend? What do you have for your recommendations today?
So I'm going to, I don't know. I keep whiffing on this guy's name. So I know like I cheated on my last commentary recommendation, and I will do that once again. I'm going to recommend a book called How to Eat Your Bible. It is a very short but really great guide on how to like have a good like Bible reading aspect to your life. It puts forth great reasons for why you should read your Bible. It puts forth a very doable, easy method to cultivate a good Bible reading habit in your life. It's really great. I was really thrilled reading it. It was mildly hyped up among Reformed people on Twitter and stuff like that. The author is Nate Pickowicz. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He was briefly seen in the gospel documentary we did.
American Gospel.
American
Christ
Gospel. But yeah, so it's a short little book, but it's a great one to have on your shelf. I prefer it to other. There's like books like How to Read Your Bible for All It's Worth by like Doug Stewart and Gordon Fee, which were kind of like the standard like how to read your Bible books. I think this one, I prefer it just in how practical and easy to use it is. So that is my commentary / Christian book recommendation.
I'm going to recommend that if we have any parents that listen to the podcast, that you get interested in your kids' lives, because a character like Norman just needed people who loved him, and who better to love him than the people that made him. And it's a true story. I interact with a lot of parents that seem to almost like, I'll say it this way. It totally makes my heart melt with joy when I see parents that are totally into what the kids are into when they're buying the stuff that they're getting at the store. It is so sweet. I am jealous for that experience. I know a lot of other people are too. I work with people also whose parents say some horrible things to them. So I know what it's like I've seen the scars of people who just wish their parents cared about them. And I've seen the scars of people whose parents just don't think anything of their kids. And so I just would recommend, if you're a parent, just get invested in your kids' lives. Don't try and get them invested in yours. Don't take them out to the ball game, because that's one of your hobbies. And it's really just an excuse so that you can go to the ball game and your wife will let you do it because you're taking the kid to babysit. Actually start to get interested in the things that your kid's doing. If they play Fortnite, learn Fortnite. And maybe it'll be easier for you to regulate what they're Fortnite playing. You're not living in China. The government's not stopping your kids from playing for more than 3 hours a week. It's your job, and they're probably going to be more likely to do it. First off, they'd be less likely to play Fortnite if you're playing it, because it's not cool anymore if you do that. But also, it's just sweet to spend time together. So that's my recommendation. Just a cute one. I think that's a cute one. What's your fun recommendation, Dan?
My fun recommendation. There were a couple things I thought about recommending. I was over my father-in-law's house, and he just watches action movies. He watched that terrible action movie starring Jason Momoa that has one of
the Netflix one.
Yeah, that has one of the stupidest twists at the end I've ever seen.
I gotta check it out. Isn't that the one where it's like it's bad pharma or big pharma or something? Yeah. I was thinking of checking it out because I think I heard on Letterboxd it's kind of like satisfyingly bad.
I can't remember the title off my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, early in the movie he calls into like a talk show, and this evil evil big pharma guy.
Just a Rite Aid pharmacist, like minimum wage worker.
They're like, why did you stop producing this cancer drug that's saving people's lives? Oh, because I'm evil. That's what he basically says. And Jason Momoa calls in and is just like, I am going to murder you. So the guy gets murdered. They're like, do you think Jason Momoa did it?
It's awesome.
And then it gets dumber from there.
So you're recommending this Jason Momoa?
No. And so I also watched Kate, which was much better than that. Kate was really cool.
One of the dumbest car chases in the world. I don't know why it happened, but it's a cool movie.
Yeah, Mary Elizabeth Winstead. The way my wife put it is Mary Elizabeth Winstead has played every version of a guy's untable fantasy woman at some point in her life. Mm-hmm. And so she's just filling out that punch card, playing an awesome action heroine. Neither of those is my recommendation. My father-in-law watched both of them, had no reaction to them. The only time he reacted was
Did he just like grunt like, and then put on the next one?
when Mary Elizabeth Winstead stabbed through someone's face in that scene, he just went, that's great. That's the only thing he reacted to. Nice. I'm going to recommend that you watch all 11 seasons of Gilmore Girls.
Yes.
I am so shocked. Good. My wife has been sick all week, and she put on Gilmore Girls, and I am genuinely shocked at how decent the show is.
It's amazing.
It has its bad points. Like, it's a little melodramatic. Things get drawn out, but the writing is shockingly sharp. The actors are all great. It has that Simpsons thing where the entire group of the town, like every townsperson is a full character, fully realized and quirky. Sean Gunn, James Gunn's brother, is in it. It's really fun. It's a great. You put the show on when you're eating dinner, and then when you actually want to engage with something, you put something else on. But it's really fun. She also played Undertale, and she's not really a gamer, but we really enjoyed playing Undertale. So
a sequel just came out for that too, I think.
Kind of. It's like a pseudo sequel, kind of. But like when she got frustrated with like losing a boss fight in that, she put it down. We put Gilmore Girls back on.
So the cycle begins.
So we've watched 3 seasons of it so far. It's very charming. I hate like scripted sitcoms with laugh tracks. This is actually more sophisticated than that.
It's
so if
funny.
You're sticking your nose up in the air and like, it sounds dumb. It sounds like a girly show. If you've watched Home Improvement or Seinfeld or any of those shows, this is both funnier and better than any of those types of scripted sitcoms. I don't know. Actually, I don't want to say it's better than Seinfeld. They're two very different things. And Seinfeld's great, but it's a solid show if you're just looking for something to watch. And if that recommendation puts you off, I recommend a science fiction show that's on Netflix called Dark Matter. The premise is a group of people wake up in cryostasis on a ship, kind of like the beginning of Alien, with no memories of how they got there, what they're doing there. And by the end of the first episode, they have used that premise to present the audience with an actually intriguing moral dilemma that immediately hooked me. It's great. It's only 3 seasons. It's awesome science fiction. So watch that instead. So my recommendation is watch Jason Momoa try and kill Big Pharma with punches.
Thanks so much for checking out this episode of Cinematic Doctrine. If you enjoyed this episode, consider leaving a review and subscribing to the podcast. And as mentioned before, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you're opted into a once-a-month movie poll where you decide a movie we discuss on the podcast. There are other unique benefits that come with supporting the podcast, so be sure to check that out at patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine. A special shout out to those who support at the Art House Theater tier on Patreon. Thank you so much, Mom, Dad, Melanie, Shirley-Ann, and Thomas. You guys are the best, and your continued monetary support is greatly appreciated. Until next time, stay cool. Want some Cinematic Doctrine swag? You're in luck! We've got 3-inch Cinematic Doctrine logo stickers exclusive for Patreon supporters. Perfect for your travel mug or laptop. Head over to patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine, link in the show notes, and choose the Independent Theater tier. Doing so will net you other perks too. But let's be real, the podcast stickers are the coolest perk. So get yourself some podcast stickers by supporting on Patreon.